Hello and welcome back. So with 3 weeks of the season in the books, we're finally getting enough of a sample size to look at some team data. So looking at team data can help you make better decisions about your fantasy team, and you can spot some trends before everyone else in your league does, which can give you an advantage. So without further ado, let's jump in. So just a quick introduction. Today we're going to look at team level data and look at trends for buy low and sell high opportunities, as well as possible waiver plays. Early season trends can guide your waiver ads and trade options. Trading is a lot of the comments that I get. Do you want this guy or this guy? And a lot of that comes down to team exposure. So we're going to look at some of that today. You typically want to add players on teams with plenty of offense and target top power plays because those are the guys that are going to get you the most likelihood of good line exposure and point production as well. You could also find some of the lesser owned up guys on good power plays that are on teams that don't play well 5-on-5. We'll go into a little bit of that as well. And then for your goaltending, you want to add goaltenders from teams with good shot suppression numbers and a good penalty kill typically. The penalty kill numbers are kind of all over the place just because of the sample size thus far in the season, but we'll look at that in more detail in a moment. And then we'll look at the best tandem options. They're usually found from those metrics, and we'll also look at combined save percentage thus far this season. So we're going to get a good 30,000 foot view of what's going on in the league and how you can potentially use this to your advantage. So to start off, what you see on the left is a graph I made showing the goals against per game leaders, and what you want to pay attention to is the top and the bottom of the list. The guys in the middle, there's just not a ton of data yet. There's only been 9 to 11 games depending on the team. So the guys that the teams that you're gonna want to pay attention to are the guys who are doing really well and then really poorly. So the top and the bottom. And at the top, you have the Golden Knights with 1.7 goals against per game, which is really exceptional through the first 10 games of the season. And as a result, what you see in the fantasy numbers is that Logan Thompson is ranked 6th overall in category leagues for Yahoo, and Aiden Hill is currently ranked 28th. So that tandem is really playing well. And as I mentioned before in some of the preseason material, Bruce Cassidy is a really good defensive coach. And I was definitely interested in seeing what he could do with this Vegas Golden Knights defense. They obviously have a really solid D-core, Martinez, Theodore, Pietrangelo, etc. So they've done a really good job at keeping goals out of their net. Their goaltending is playing really well, though, as well. I just wasn't going to bank my entire team on Logan Thompson just because if he faltered, they would have potentially made a move. But he hasn't faltered. He's played very well. And so if you own one or both of those guys, you're definitely in a good spot right now. If Aiden Hill is available on your waiver wire, he has really good numbers to start the season. Now, you can see number 2, Boston. They have a 2.3 goals against per game. And if you look at the Yahoo ranks for Boston as well, Linus Ullmark is number 4 overall in fantasy. So that's the guy that's been getting it done for Boston. Jeremy Swayman is nowhere to be found. He's ranked 454 with a 3.76 goals against and an 872 save percentage. But what this tells me is that this is an excellent buy low opportunity for Swayman because his team is 10th in shots against, as we'll see in a minute, and 2nd in goals against. And his numbers are this bad. So there's likely a regression to the mean when it comes to Jeremy Swayman. But if you have Ullmark, you're sitting pretty. He's number 4 overall in category leagues in Yahoo. So this is what I'm talking about, looking at the data, finding a team that's giving up not that many goals per game. We'll look at the shot data in just a moment, and you'll see that they're 10th. And then trying to pair that with a guy whose numbers aren't great right now, and that's Jeremy Swayman. And you could potentially buy low on him at this point and then have him take off and regress back to the mean. And then what you see here is Dallas in third in goals against per game, and Jake Ottinger is the top-ranked goalie in fantasy right now in category leagues. He's number 3 overall total, not just goalies, everybody in the league. So he's been getting it done for Dallas. I believe he has 5 wins on the season. He did have a slight injury against the Rangers on Saturday, but I didn't see anything too concerning there. He was on the bench as the backup in the rest of that game. So you're probably still safe with Jake Ottinger there. And then the Devils, they're a bit of a surprise here at 4th. And right now, if you look at the Yahoo rankings, Vanacek is ranked 61st. So he's getting it done right now. We'll go into him in a little bit more detail in just a moment. And then the Flyers are right below them, and Carter Hart is ranked 29th overall. So you see the trend here. The teams at the top here, these also coincide with goaltenders that are getting it done. I'm not sure, I did actually mention in one of the mock draft videos that I was a little bit higher on Carter Hart this year just because of John Tortorella's defensive system. We'll see some of the other metrics here to show how good he's been, but the trend also works in reverse here. If you look at the bottom, you see some awful signs if you're a Merzlikins owner. So Columbus is last in the league, averaging 4.4 goals against per game. They just got shelled on Sunday, 7-1. Merzlikins didn't look good in that one. And then if you look over here, this is data by Top Down Hockey, and the viz is by JFresh. He's a great follow on Twitter. Definitely want to shout him out for making analytics more digestible. But you can see here, negative 9.1. So that's goals saved above expected. He's way, way at the bottom. That's not just him. That's also Tarasov. But Merzlikins is carrying a lot of that. So as we'll see in a moment, and we get to the shots data, Columbus is really bad defensively, averaging 34.5 shots against per game. And on top of that, their goaltending is way below average, as you can see right here. So if you have Merzlikins, I'd drop him right now. Drop him to the wire, try to figure something else out. If he starts to put his game together later on, he's probably going to still be there on the waiver wire. Nobody really wants him at this point. Now, nobody should have been rostering Coyotes goalies to begin with, so that's less of a problem. But the Ducks are also brutal thus far defensively. 4.2 goals against per game, and their goaltending is fourth worst in goals saved below expected. So if you own John Gibson, it's probably time to drop him to the wire as well. These numbers are not good, so he's not getting it done. Negative 5.8 here, and then Anaheim is giving up a ton of shots as well. The Minnesota Wild on this list is a bit alarming as they're giving up an average amount of shots against, but their goaltending just hasn't been there yet this season, and that's something I was hesitant about when I was thinking about Fleury in drafts. So I didn't know what to expect in terms of his play, but I knew Minnesota was a very good team that would get you wins, and they just haven't thus far. They got off to a middling start. I think they're hovering around 500 now, kind of getting back into it, but the goals saved above expected is really low, third worst in the league right now. That's mainly Fleury. Gustafsson has not been tested too much. He hasn't been getting too many starts, but if you're a Fleury owner, I wouldn't necessarily drop him quite yet because the whole team was a little bit lackluster to start the year, but that is something to keep an eye on. If this continues, then maybe you have to look for potentially a trade or potentially dropping Fleury. I wouldn't just drop him to the wire. He does have name value, but could be a trade option for you as well. Now, the surprise for me is LA. So last year, one of the best shot suppression teams in the league, and I was giving out their tandem as a handcuff option, and this year both goalies are not ownable at all right now. So that did not work out. We all make mistakes. I was looking at the data from last year. This is somewhat of an anomaly. Quick is currently ranked at 647 in Yahoo category leagues and has a 3.81 goals against, an 878 save percentage, and Cal Peterson is somehow even worse. 4.1 goals against and an 865 save percentage. So if you own either of those guys, even if you believe in the Kings longer term, for now you should drop them and wait for them to get their game in order. Now, as we switch it over to shots against, you see some interesting things emerge. The Devils are second in the league at suppressing shots, which is something I did mention during my draft recap video as a reason why I picked Blackwood. But it seems that Vanacek has momentarily taken over the 1A, and we will again come back to that in just a minute. Another thing you notice is at the top is St. Louis is fourth in the league in shots against, but as we saw in the last slide, seventh worst in goals against. So that indicates that it's a goaltending issue. So Binnington, currently ranked 93rd overall in category leagues. He's got a 2.6 goals against, which isn't bad, but a 903 save percentage, which isn't great. Thomas Greiss, he's ranked 471, and he's got a 4.1 goals against and a 904 save percentage. So it appears as though the team plays better defensively for Binnington, but neither goalie has a good enough save percentage to become, overly ownable. So if you have Binnington, it is likely sample size because they didn't play that much in the first 2 or 3 weeks. They missed it. I think they only had like 3 games in the first 2 weeks or something like that, but it does not look good so far for Binnington. I would hold on. Don't make any rash decisions yet. He's still the starter on a really good team. and we'll probably wait for St. Louis to start picking it up before we make a judgment call on Binnington. Now, a few other pleasant surprises. Seattle is suppressing shots. They're just not getting the goaltending, as you see right there. The goals below expected, negative 7.6. I actually switched this over to goals saved above expected to show you the other end of the spectrum, but they were negative 7.6 in goals saved below expected. And that is partly Grubauer, but he's hurt right now, so that also falls on Martin Jones. So that's something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't own either of those guys at this point, but if they could start to put some saves together, their team is actually suppressing shots at a pretty decent rate. Now, the Red Wings are up there as well. They're 7th, and that may be great news for Husso owners, because Husso is ranked 52nd right now. He has a 2.4 goals against and a 926 save percentage. So if you took a shot on him in your draft, it's working out really nicely for you early on. Nedeljkovic isn't doing as well as his counterpart. He's got a 3.96 goals against and an 890 save percentage. That's something to monitor. You could potentially look at him as a regression to the mean candidate, but his numbers last year were not great either. So you'd kind of be banking on the fact that he put up really good numbers in Carolina 2 years ago and hoping that he regresses back to those numbers, but I wouldn't necessarily bank on that. Just maybe keep an eye on it if you're desperate for goaltending. And again, as we turn to the bottom of the list, you see Columbus down there giving up a ton of shots, along with Anaheim and San Jose. But I'm slightly worried to see Pittsburgh, 4th worst in shots against. Now, I know they just went 0 for 4 on their Western Canadian trip, and that likely plays a huge role, as that is 40% of their season thus far. So I'm not exactly panicking yet, but it is troublesome for a team that is usually pretty stout defensively. You'll also notice Colorado fairly low on this list with 297 shots against so far. That is a bit concerning as well. They only have a +1 goal differential and only scoring 3.1 goals for per game. So their offense is still adjusting to life without Kadri and Burakovsky, and their defense hasn't been elite either. Now, this could be a bit concerning for Georgiev owners, but he's played fairly well to start. So he's got a 2.81 goals against and a 918 save percentage. But especially for Francouz owners who wanted access to Colorado, Francouz currently ranked 420 in Yahoo category leagues. He's got a 3.08 goals against and an 898 save percentage. So not a great option thus far, though that is a small sample size. He's only gotten into 3 games, I'm pretty sure, if I'm reading that correctly. Now, what I look for in terms of goals saved above expected is there are some regression candidates on this list on both sides. For example, I'm not sure how long Montreal can keep that up. Same thing with Buffalo and maybe Philly. The same goes for the previous list. Vancouver, Florida, and Minnesota could all potentially be buy low opportunities for goaltending, as they're suppressing shots pretty well. They're just not getting the saves early on. And Demko is a perfect case study of that. He did this exact same thing last year. So if you remember, I owned him. I was waiting for them to fire Travis Green, and they didn't. His numbers were pretty bad. The team numbers were pretty bad. And then I dropped him. And then as soon as that happened, they brought in Bruce Boudreau, and his season took off. So if you have one of those guys that I just mentioned, Demko, maybe Bobrovsky or Knight, Marc-Andre Fleury, don't panic yet. Just hold on to him and see if things start to turn around as the sample size grows and maybe the team starts to play a little bit better. Now, what you see here is combined save percentage for the team. So it should come as no surprise given what we've seen already that Vegas is at the top with a 941 combined save percentage. But what should come as a surprise is the Flyers at number 2. Now, obviously, Carter Hart is off to a great start, and he's apparently carrying this stat as Felix Sandstrom has 0 wins, a 3.14 goals against, and a 900 save percentage. So not terrible, but nowhere near Hart's 231 goals against and 938 save percentage with 5 wins. So if you look at the goals saved above expected on the right, you can see Philly is way up here. Now, that could be an indication of 2 things. It could either be a regression candidate to the mean, or it could be a signal that Carter Hart is going to have himself a year. So decide for that, for yourself. If you believe in Tortorella's defense and Carter Hart, he's still a really young goalie, and he's got all the talent in the world. I kind of would lean on that, continuing, maybe not at this exact level. I don't necessarily see them keeping up a 927 combined save percentage the entire season, but Carter Hart's been playing really well, and it's usually As I mentioned before, Tortorella's defense is, over the past number of years, he's ranked 7th in terms of goals against. So this could be something that could continue. It's just really a gut call for you if you believe in the team or not. Now, it also shows how well Jake Ottinger has been playing. If you can see here, positive 8.3 on the goal save above expected. So that's, he's also showing that here, 9.25 combined save percentage. He's carrying some of that. Wedgwood has played pretty well, but he's been giving up some goals compared to Ottinger. But another surprise on this list is Montreal, and the guy carrying the load isn't Jake Allen. So Sam Montembeault has a 931 save percentage and a 232 goals against, and 2 wins in 3 appearances. So that's why they're up here on the goal save above expected. But this is just my opinion, but because of the small sample size and the lack of a track record for Montembeault, I'd view that more as a candidate for regression than a target. Jake Allen, had a good start to the season. He's kind of regressed a little bit, and Montembeault's taken it over and gotten a couple nice starts in there, but it's only 3 games in terms of that sample size, so that's a candidate for regression in my opinion. Now, as you look at the bottom of the team save percentage data, LA is obviously the worst, and we talked about them already, but the conundrum is for the New Jersey Devils. So I mentioned them a couple times before. We saw in the last slide, they're 2nd in the league in shots against. We saw earlier that they were 4th in goals against, and we saw in the first slide they are 3.6 goals saved below expected. So what the hell is going on with this data? So if you look at the overall numbers, Vanacek, 3 wins, 2.08 goals against is excellent, but the 903 save percentage isn't great. So why is that? Let's look at his first start, a 773 save percentage because he gave up 5 goals on 22 shots. That will kill his save percentage. Then he comes in relief against Washington and gives up 1 goal on 4 shots, also killing his save percentage. The next 3 starts look very good for Vanacek, and that shutout helps boost his numbers back up. Then if you look at Blackwood, he started poorly, giving up 4 goals on 24 shots, which hurt his save percentage. But then he had 3 quality starts and 3 wins that helped boost his numbers. And then he had that game against Washington where he gave up 5 goals on 18 shots, and that brought his that 722 save percentage brought his numbers back down. So this is a tricky thing trying to predict as it's happening, because on any given night, one of these two can get shelled. But it's not because of shot volume, it's because they don't get a ton of shots, but the quality chances are there, and they're letting in 4 or 5 on 18 or 20 shots. So overall, the team is playing pretty great D, and they're getting the goal support that they need. So I would probably look at these two as a potential tandem option, if not for one thing. In category leagues, one bad appearance can destroy your goals against and save percentage for the entire week. And between the two of them, they've had 4 bad appearances in just 9 games. So if you're in a points league, this could be a really nice tandem option for you because it's not going to destroy your entire week if they have a bad game. But in a category league, that will happen. So I'd prefer to stay away from this tandem because of that phenomenon if you're in a categories league. But again, for points leagues, these guys could be a nice target option. They're not fully owned up. Last time I checked, Vanacek was in the mid-30s in terms of ownership, and Blackwood was a little bit lower than that. Now, as we return to the data, we're going to quickly take a look at the penalty kill percentage of teams thus far. And you typically want to make sure your goalie's team has a good penalty kill. And if you look at the bottom, Vancouver is last in the league at 62%, and that likely explains why they're so bad to start the season. So if Bruce Boudreau can fix that penalty kill, they would likely start putting some wins together and climb out of the hole that they're in. Now, it is somewhat surprising to see Colorado 4th worst in the league at 69.7%, but this pairs with what we saw in the shots data. They are not an elite defensive team despite the common perception. Also, as a Pittsburgh tandem owner, I don't like to see them 5th worst on this list as well. I did mention that this is a likely result of that 4-game Western swing that they went 0 for 4 on, and it's something to monitor going forward, but this is not necessarily the definitive stat that should make or break your goaltending decisions. But at the top of this list, the Islanders, they actually, this is 96.67%, but they set an NHL record. They didn't allow a power play goal against in their first 8 games of the season. So that's apparently never been done in the NHL before. That's kind of insane. And that's why their penalty kill percentage is so good. And it's part of the reason why Sorokin is currently ranked 31st in Yahoo rankings, though he is playing incredibly well on his own thus far. He's got a 2.21 goals against and a 933 save percentage and a shutout in 6 appearances. So really good stuff for all you Sorokin owners. Now, somewhat surprising to see on this list is the Sharks and where they are. So way up at the top, the Sharks penalty kill actually pretty good so far. They are right in the middle of the league in goals against with 3.09 per game. They're giving up way too many shots against, ranking third last in the league with 327 shots against. That's 29.7 per game. But the real issue for San Jose is goals for. So as we turn to that metric, San Jose ranks last in the league with 2.18 goals for per game, which is something we talked about on this channel. I mentioned before the season that the only fantasy relevant players in San Jose were the guys on their power play, and that seems to be the case thus far. So Timo Meier currently ranked 35, Erik Karlsson 36, Luke Kunin 46, Logan Couture 138, and Tomas Hertl 152. The only surprise there is Luke Kunin, who's been off to a pretty good start, but mainly due to his hits and shot volume. He's got 26 of each to go with 5 points in 11 games. But that's what I'm talking about. They don't score 5-on-5. They don't have a lot of production, so the only guys you're going to want there are maybe Timo Meier, Erik Karlsson, Luke Kunin if you need peripherals, but then maybe Couture and Hertl, the only other 2 guys that are ownable there for San Jose. Now, at the complete opposite end of the list here, Boston is absolutely torching the league right now. They're averaging 4.22 goals for per game. As you can see over here, 3.6 above expected, but they also just got a bump from having Brad Marchand come back early. And then I also heard this morning that Charlie McAvoy is traveling with the team and he's practicing in a regular jersey, so he may be coming back soon as well. This is the kind of team that you want exposure to in fantasy, and thus far the beneficiaries have been guys like Jake DeBrusk, 3 goals, 4 assists, 36 shots, that's 16th in the league in shots. And then Hampus Lindholm was a popular stream early in the season. He's ranked 117 with 2 goals, 5 assists, 3 power play points, 15 shots, and 13 hits. But this is probably the time to sell high on him before everyone else in your league realizes that McAvoy is coming back, and McAvoy will probably take back that PP1 time. Now, the biggest surprise here is the Islanders, 4th in the league in goals for. I never would have expected that. Likely a product of a 7-goal game against the Ducks, a 5-goal game against the Sharks, and a 6-goal outburst Friday against the Hurricanes. And then they had a great come-from-behind effort against the defending champs, where they put up 5 on Colorado to come back and win that game. So if you're looking for Isles to target, Anders Lee is the highest-ranked player at 59. Only 52% owned. I've mentioned him in a couple of the weekly ads videos. 4 goals, 5 assists, 2 power play points, 24 shots. Matt Barzal is up there as well. He's 84th ranked right now. 61% ownership. No goals at all. 10 assists, 25 shots. He's likely to start scoring soon with that shot volume and no goals at all. So you could get out in front of that and try to pick up Barzal in hopes that he'll start scoring some goals, but he is definitely getting some assists. So if you desperately need assists, he's a guy that's been getting it done on Long Island. And then there's also Noah Dobson, who's mostly owned up at 95%. So he's probably not there for you, but if you did draft him, you're getting a lot of your value back. And also wanted to mention Brock Nelson, ranked 114. He's 38% owned, 3 goals, 6 assists, 2 power play points, and 24 shots. And he's not one of those sexy name files, so he's probably available for you. The only problem is he's a center only. So there's probably some better center options out there, but he is getting it done for the Islanders, and that's kind of surprising to see them at the top, up at number 4 overall. So as you look at the goals above expected on the right, you see Chicago and Arizona. They could be regression candidates, but they also could be decent short-term streaming options if you're in a pinch. So for Chicago, guys like Max Domi and Sam Lafferty have been getting it done with 7 points each, as well as Taylor Radish with 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists. And don't look now, but Patrick Kane is ranked 67th in category leagues. So if he fell in your draft and you grabbed him, look who's laughing now. As for Arizona, obviously Gostisbehere has been great with 4 goals, 4 assists, 5 power play points, and 26 shots. but Nick Ritchie and Lawson Krause have been decent thus far as well. Keller has been losing a little bit of fantasy value due to his lack of peripherals, but he does have 2 goals and 6 assists with 3 power play points, and he is dual eligible. Also, I thought I mentioned this maybe at another point in the video, but Dylan Guenther's playing power play time. He's got a couple power play points, so he's potentially an option. And JJ Moser, I've mentioned him in a couple other videos. He's got a couple power play points as well. So those could be some guys. And then Matthias Michelli, 4 power play points on the season as well. Those are his only points though, so be careful with that file. Now, with any of those teams you saw on the previous slide, you're likely going to want to target guys on the power play for your waiver ads. And this is a ranking of the top power plays in the league thus far, as well as the combined special teams goals for on the right. So this is power play and penalty kill goals for. This is again JFresh data, top-down hockey data, courtesy of JFresh. And obviously, if you look at the left, Colorado is way ahead of everyone else. That's pretty obvious. Their power play was on fire to start the season. They had 4 power play goals on opening night against the Hawks, and they had a power play goal in each of their first 4 games. They've only been held scoreless on the power play twice this season, once against New Jersey and once against Seattle. But most of their power play is owned up, though as I mentioned in the weekly recap video, Lehkonen is still sitting at 65% ownership. So if he's there, you could definitely still target him. Now, in terms of Arizona, they're also a bit of a surprise here at 30%. And I just did mention some of those guys. JJ Moser is a factor. He's got 3 power play points. Michelli has 4 power play points, and he's 0% owned. Dylan Guenther, 3 power play points in only 7 games, and he's 1% owned. So there are guys that you can turn to in a daily stream kind of option to pick up some of these guys if you need power play points. This power play is clicking at a pretty decent percentage, 30% thus far. Now, I quickly want to mention Edmonton's power play. They're obviously number 2, and you're not going to get most of those guys. Nugent Hopkins is on it, and he's top 10 in power play points with 6, and he's 88% owned. But if you're in a shallow league and he's sitting there for whatever reason, you definitely should scoop him up. This power play is 33%, and they're one of those teams that could potentially increase on that number, which is kind of crazy to say, historically speaking, but I would not necessarily think that these 2 teams, they're probably going to be the top 2 teams regardless at the end of the year. It's just a matter of what their percentage comes in at. And if you can get exposure to any of the guys on those power plays, that's definitely something that you want to look out for. Now, as we look at the bottom of this list, we see that Columbus doesn't have a power play goal yet. The bad news just keeps coming for the Blue Jackets. They're 0 for 25 so far, but that may have something to do with Laine being out for several games. So if they can start using Laine in that Ovechkin spot, maybe put Goudreau on the opposite side with Werenski at the top, I'd imagine they're going to eventually get that power play goal going, and it could be a buy low opportunity for some of the guys on that unit. So right now, Voracek and Roslovic are currently listed as the PP1 guys, but they also have Jenner, Kent Johnson, Nyquist, and Chinakhov, as well as David Juracek on PP2. And some of those guys may get an opportunity given the futility they've had on the man advantage. As I mentioned preseason, I was excited to see how Chinakhov could do, and after a slow start, no points in his first 3 games, he has 6 points in his last 7. So you can see his shot is beating goalies from distance, and that's something that I'm still monitoring. He's not quite there for me in my 12-team league in terms of potentially being a waiver pickup, but he has started to get it going, and he could potentially start to see some more power play time because of that. Now, another thing at the bottom of this list, Nashville shouldn't be that low on this list either. They've ranked 6th in the previous season with 24.42% on the power play. They're currently 3rd worst in the league at 8.33% this year, and that is likely impacting their total goals for, which ranks 3rd worst in the league as well at 2.44 per game. Now, I mentioned in the Global Series video that I did that teams coming back from Europe usually hover around 500 for the next 10 games or so. And right now they've had 9 games played, and they're 3-5-1, which is right on track with the analysis that I did in that video. So they should start to improve in the coming weeks, and if they're going to improve offensively, it has to start with their power play. Their penalty kill is 6th best in the league at 84.8%. and they are a -1 goal differential at 5-on-5. So if they're going to start to get it going, it has to come from their power play. Guys that you could target on that power play, Mikael Granlund is probably there for you. He's typically a power play guy and an assist guy. We mentioned him in previous videos. You're probably not going to get Forsberg, but Johansson and Duchesne might be there for you as well. Yossi's probably owned up in almost every league at this point. And if you have one of those guys, I wouldn't necessarily panic. Again, within the first 10 games coming back from Europe, that's probably why all those numbers are the way that they are. Now, it's also concerning that Florida's power play is so low at 9.76%, but the reasons behind this are fairly obvious. They lost their power play quarterback in Jonathan Huberdeau, and Aaron Ekblad's been out with an injury. So Brandon Montour has picked up the slack with 2 power play points in the last week or two. Barkov and Tkachuk lead the team with 3 power play points, but they do need to get it going. So if you remember back last year, as a team, they were averaging 4.11 goals for per game. This year, 3.22. So they've lost almost a full goal per game from last year to this year. Again, partly due to Huberdeau leaving, but it's also partly due to injuries to Ekblad and Anthony Duclair. Let's not forget about him. Last year, their power play percentage was 24%, right ahead of Nashville, good for 5th in the league. So this is one clear area that they need to improve, and it could provide a buy low opportunity for guys like Sam Reinhart, who's on that PP1. Hasn't quite gotten it going. I've been getting a lot of trade requests involving him and wondering what to do with Sam Reinhart. I would wait until everybody's healthy, wait until they start to get that power play going, because it's still pretty abysmal right now. So just to summarize, I could have gone into a bit more detail on each team and everything, but I really need to make sure all of you guys don't fall asleep during these videos. So if you have any further questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. If you have any specific questions about your team, maybe consider joining our Discord group, which you can find in the Patreon link in the description below. A lot of great resources in that Discord group. Players, guys on other teams that, watch other teams regularly. They're able to provide some insight for everybody. But again, some of these early season trends are sample size related, and I did want to wait until some games were played to do a video like this, but it is still early. So we do have enough data to start to do this analysis, but you don't want to panic. You want to make sure that if you drafted a guy pretty high, you're going to hold on to him and wait until, there's at least some, maybe 20, 25 games. If he's still not getting it done, depending on where you draft them, I'll probably do a video about ads and drops, trades, and things like that this week. But yeah, just wanted to caution you guys that the sample size is still pretty small, but I did want to kind of get some early season trends out there for you guys. You do want to try to find regression candidates. Florida's power play likely won't stay that bad for long. Same with Nashville. You typically want to find waiver ads that are on top offensive teams and or target the few players on bad teams that are getting opportunities, like that Sharks power play, Arizona's power play, etc. In terms of goaltending, you want to find goalies with good defensive teams, as that's more important to have than the talent of the goalie. So if you don't believe me, go talk to your Demko owner in your league, and they'll tell you that it doesn't matter how talented the goalie is if the team sucks. And as far as tandems go, take another look at that combined save percentage graph, which you can find all of the graphs I used in this video in the Patreon link in the description below. But if you stuck through to the end of this video, I want to thank you again for watching. Good luck this week in fantasy, and I will see you in the next one.